Welcome, everyone. Robin Miles here from InspireMe Consulting, and I've got Stephen here with me today, who we've been working together for the last year. And instead of me introducing him, Steve, do you want to just introduce yourself for everyone?
My name's Stephen. So lovely to have the opportunity to talk to you about what we've been doing for the last 12 months and what's, I guess, changed for me.
Perfect. So, kind of, we were having a bit of fun there, kind of rewinding back to some of the first emails and stuff like that. But if you can wind yourself back to, coming into Christmas, pretty much it was November, wasn't it? Kind of
Mm.
coming into Christmas this time a year ago. Like, where were things at for you? What kind of can you remember? What was the driving force to kind of reach out in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually went back and had a look at some of the notes, and I did a little bit of a review. And the thing that really stood out for me having a look at that was 12 months ago.
Mm.
The phrase holding pattern. Life felt like it was in a bit of a holding pattern.
Mm.
There was a sense that I needed to take some steps forward in a couple of different areas of my life,
Mm.
but it just wasn't happening at that point. Mm.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really interesting one because as I asked that question, I just actually reflected on one of the biggest challenges that I see for people is that actually that reaching out because a
Mm.
lot of people were kind of suffering or struggling with stuff. I was going to catch up with someone on the weekend, on Friday, to help them because the stuff wasn't going well at work. Before
Mm.
I got to catch up, she said, "Oh, look, we need to reschedule because an hour ago I just got sacked." Do you know what I mean? I'm like, it was too late. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's a really good thing because I reckon that holding pattern, that's a really good quote unquote, like a lot of people might resonate with that you kind of, especially
Mm.
coming towards the end of the year, which we are at the moment, that you can just feel that you're in a bit of a holding pattern and like what's holding me back. So and did you have any thoughts at that time about like if you were in that holding pattern, like what might have been kind of holding you back?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it's very much that as you come through your early working career and towards your mid career,
Mm,
things start off really quite quickly. And as you're building a family, things happen quickly, and you really got really clear direction on what happens next.
mm,
I go to school, I go to uni, I get my first graduate job, I take these steps, I become this role, then that role, then that role. I start a family,
mm,
I have a child, and you can see a really clear progression.
yeah.
And for me, when we got say mid career and you know well and truly into the guts of family life, it
Mm,
it was the well things do start to slow down a little bit, and the next steps aren't as defined. Um, so I think that was part of the sense of it's ready for me to really understand what the next steps are, who I
mm,
am, what I'm about, and I guess living that truth.
yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, it kind of hits me that word of like being really clear with your purpose because like when you're in those earlier phases, it's just
mm,
like, well, you've got your purpose, which is like career and work, and I'm building
that's
that, and
right.
then I'm in a relationship, and then it's the house and the cars and then it's the kids. Oh, wait a minute, that's another challenge, right? So your purpose is almost like given to you. Do you know what I mean? And then you kind of like get there and go, okay, where am I now, type of thing. Yeah. So let's just fast forward completely like you are now doing your kind of your year compass of review of like the year
Mm.
that's just been the 12 months that's been and looking forward to preparing for 2023. So where are you at right now with things?
Things are really good. So
Mm.
I think I mentioned to you oh, a few weeks ago now, but it feels like just things are on fire for me,
In a good
which
way,
is
that is.
in a good
Okay,
way. Yeah, yeah.
but
Not
yeah.
not literally,
Yeah.
but no, it really does feel um, quite freeing. I feel quite free, ready to do what I need to do, a little bit more comfortable.
Mm,
Um, I think there's a couple of real points in the work that we've done together, facing up to some of the things I was putting on myself,
mm,
some of the expectations I had of myself, and then identifying, well, what am I actually about? What is Steve about? What's my purpose?
yeah.
and once I moved through those two things, it became a really quite freeing, liberating sense.
Mm.
And then I look back, as you know, your question was, what's the last 12 months look like? It's been immense change. It didn't seem that much at the time, but when I look back at a year in review, there's been some really big milestones. You know, I've changed career, employer.
Mm.
I finished a master's degree. Um, you know, I've achieved some milestones at home in terms of, you know, renovations and things like that. So it's been an incredibly busy year.
Mm.
And I've also had the time to work on self as well.
Mm. That's awesome. And thoughts for next year? Kind of, you know, what's your thoughts on for next year? Is it about continuing that in balance, or what's the focus for next year?
I think it's really important not to, you know, we've sort of got to a point where there's that level of comfort and clarity.
Mm.
And I feel like if I don't maintain some work, that
Mm.
it would be really easy to um, head sort of back off course.
Yeah.
Um, so I think the reflective practice, the, you know, contemplation
Mm.
is important, and then actually doing the work and and doing some actions,
Mm.
really important.
Yeah. No, that's cool, because that's what we see a lot of the time is people kind of like go, right, cool, I've got the next job, and then they don't do anything more, and then they find that the next job still has the same problems that they had in their last job, or whatever the case may be. So that ongoing self-reflection is important. And what about for you, like, because had you worked with a coach like me personally before us working together, or not really?
I'd had a I'd had a couple of sessions with another coach, yeah. So that
Yeah.
was a number of years ago.
Yeah.
Um, I would probably say perhaps at that stage of my life, I just wasn't ready.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, and you know, potentially, I think it's, you know, when you choose a coach, it's probably important to choose one that gels
Mm.
well as well. So I think it is quite an intimate relationship in some ways.
Mm.
So you've got to have somebody that you talk to openly, and that does take a little bit of time even to develop in itself. But you know, once you get there, it's quite helpful. Mm.
Yeah, that's interesting you're saying about the time, because I was just like thinking for people who like resonate, because it would be easy for you to go, or for anyone to go, look, I'm in a holding pattern, things aren't disastrous. What's the point in
Mm.
actually investing in it? Because there's a monetary kind of investment there, do you know what I mean? And a time investment and a vulnerability investment.
Mm.
So what was it for you that kind of pushed you across the edge of those boundaries of, or limitations of money and time and vulnerability? And because you were in a holding pattern, there wasn't like an immense amount of pain. What was the tipping point for you to kind of go, yeah, I'm going to invest in myself?
Um, Great question. So I think for me, it was the fact that if you do nothing, then nothing changes.
Yeah. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and it really was a little bit of, I think I'd looked at your profile.
Mm.
I'd put it away in a you know, a tab that sat open on my phone for,
Yeah.
you know, a number of weeks, and went back and had a look at it a couple of
Yeah.
times. So I watched a few of your um, videos on maybe LinkedIn or
Yeah.
one of the other platforms,
Mm.
and you know, some of them did resonate quite well,
Mm.
but it probably took me a number of weeks or possibly even a couple of months to go, okay,
Mm.
if I don't change something, then things will stay the same. I'll stay in a holding pattern. So
Yeah. And that's
that's
sometimes what I do
the
with people. They're like, oh, look, I want to make these changes, but now's not time. And I'm like, okay, well, when's good for you to catch up? And they say, oh, look, in 2 months, and then 2 months.
mm,
And then they go to tell me exactly what my notes told me that they said 2 months ago. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to stop you there. And you didn't do that. But that's what happens with people sometimes. It's just that reflection about how much time can kind of happen. Um, so what were some of the standout things for you? Like there have been some of the changes that you've made, you're feeling on fire, more free, more loose, looking forward to kind of next year. What were some of
mm.
the kind of the pivotal kind of moments or insights? They could be trainings, they could be realizations you had. Were there any kind of like nuggets along the way that you found most kind of helpful?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some really great trainings that sometimes, and in fact, sometimes Robin, I'd watch them and think to myself, having seen the topic and gone, not sure what I'm going to get out of this one,
Yeah.
but having then worked through it,
Mm.
because I've always found that there's something to take away from each one of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so just being open to listening, watching, talking,
Mm.
and try and take something away.
Mm.
So specifically, I think some of the work around influence has been really helpful.
Yeah.
Um, how you show up and
Mm.
making sure that that matches with your own inner truth,
Yeah.
my own inner truth.
Mm.
Um, Not having a mismatch between how you present yourself to the world and how you genuinely feel inside is really
Yeah.
important. I think a pivotal moment was there was some work around schemas and the perceptions that we all have and the way that we respond.
Mm.
Um, that was really useful. It was sort of unpacking, well, why do I do that? Why do I behave the way that I behave? And
That's such a
how?
good question for everyone. Why is it that I actually do that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And then, how does that look like to others?
Yeah.
And then what are some of the strategies that I might use to help me manage self?
Yeah.
So that was quite pivotal, and that also, led me through to confronting a few events in my life that I went, okay, if we actually confront these head on and
Mm.
talk about them
Mm.
and uh, sort of stop avoiding them, then what could that look like? And
Mm.
that was incredibly liberating.
Yeah. And that's why I always call them like removing hidden obstacles, because if they were like right in front of you and you knew it, then you probably would have done something. And some people do. They know they've got an obstacle and
Mm.
they're working and they can't overcome it and they want some help. But a lot of people, it's actually what you don't see, what you're not focusing your energy on, that's actually holding you back. So yeah, that's cool. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for kind of sharing a bit of the journey. It's been a pleasure working with you and to continue to work with you. But any final thoughts, comments? Because you were watching those videos, over a year ago, and now you're going to be on one of them. So is there any final comments or anything you wanted to say at all?
Look, I think when the time is right
Hmm.
to just do it.
Yeah.
It did take me a little bit of time to make that jump from investigation into actually making a change.
Hmm.
Um, Once I felt committed to it, it was a really good investment in my time,
Hmm.
and I'm quite happy that the last 12 months it's really been transformative.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Steve, for joining us. Thanks for everyone else, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.
If you found this video helpful, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Feel free to share with friends and check out what's up next for more videos from my channel.